people that have woken up in bed with a stranger. What's your story? When I was 11, I went to my friend's place for a horror movie sleepover night. I woke up with a 4-year-old boy who turned out to be her little brother, clinging to all my blankets in fear. He had eavesdropped on our sleepover after pretending to go to bed early, and was now convinced a killer doll would murder him in his sleep. Their mom made us all hot chocolate and then he slept in her bed all night. I was taking a train from Munich to Venice. It was one of those trains that the little rooms have chairs that pull out into beds. A older Italian gentleman came in the room and as the train took off he made the sleep hand gesture. So I crashed out with this old dude. I woke up to him tapping me letting me know we will be in Venice after the next stop. I was around 19 years old and at a weekend festival where most people camped out in tents. I got hammered and blacked out on Saturday and woke up on an air mattress in somebody else's tent. I sat up to get my bearings at some point in the morning and a couple was also in the tent, but not laying on the air mattress. The guy sat up right after me and said, "Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you better get the FK out of here." I didn't stick around to ask any questions. Away at college. Went to a bar. Met a girl. I woke up the next morning in an on-campus apartment sharing a recliner with said girl. Neither of us lived on campus or knew who lived in the apartment we ended up at. I know a guy who went home with a stranger. Went pee in the middle of the night naked. Went back to bed. Woke up to screaming. He had gone back to the wrong room and was naked in her mother's bed. I woke up with an eye patch on. It was November 1st and then I managed to pick up a cute woman who dressed up as a pirate. I was so blackout, I charmed myself into being with someone way out of my league. She would later tell me I couldn't get my DK up, making her regret her decision. Alcohol gives, alcohol takes away. The stranger wasn't in my bed, he was standing beside it looking down at me. He had not been in my apartment when I went to bed. He had broken in and apparently spent quite a bit of time in there before entering my bedroom. Had broken in through one door and created an exit for himself that took him past the door had entered through and out through our other, almost never used, door. I chased him out but lost him in the alley behind my building. The police believe that my reaction saved me from a sexual assault and possibly from abduction. Unfortunately they never caught the guy. While still living at my parents' house, woke up after a club night. It was still a bit dark, but I saw someone next to me in my bed. Spent 15 minutes trying to figure who this was before I decided to take a look. Turns out it were my extra blankets I used to fill up the space between bed and wall. Decided I needed a lot more sleep before going out of bed. Woke up, didn't remember his name, pretend to ask for his messenger so that I could get his name again. Next month will be our 4th anniversary. Not a bed but kind of an abandoned trailer in the middle of the desert. Found shelter, slept in it, woke up there was another person in there. They didn't know I was in there either. When I stood up and looked around they were staring at me all wide-eyed and clearly freaked out. I didn't know what to do and we just looked at each other for a little bit. I don't know what to say so I offered her some corn nuts. We both laughed at that and then we shortly left without asking any questions. That's the closest I ever got to a one-night stand. How about the opposite? I was out drinking with this girl and her friends I had just met. Ended up going back to their hotel room and hooking up, fell asleep around 3 a.m., woke up around 5 a.m. with a bad hangover and completely alone. Somewhere between 3 and 5 the girl and her friends packed their shit and checked out of the hotel while I was asleep. Not woke up with one but came home from primary school around 11 years of age. To find a complete stranger in my bed, being completely naive thinking he was a family friend. I made us both sandwiches to give to him. I returned to my room to find him gone. I now look back at this with complete horror. My family finds it amusing that it took me years to tell my family about it. I woke up to the sound of rain hitting the tent I was in, not my tent, and the random guy next to me saying OFK. My unicycle. Dunno, can barely remember flashes of the nightclub, dancing with some girl, and then waking up in my hotel room with her next to me fully nude and my buddy fast asleep in his bed. I don't actually remember getting laid. She wasn't a hooker. I still had all my cash the next morning. Vegas, man. Not exactly the answer to the question, but my dad told me something scary after his stroke. Because he couldn't feel one side of his body, he would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and think a stranger had broken in and was laying next to him. He would have to calm down and remember that he'd had a major stroke and didn't immediately realize that the person he thought was laying next to him was he himself. Got really drunk at a dorm party. Ended up carrying a passed out girl up to her room. 3 flights of stairs, elevator was out. Plunked her in her bed, took her shoes off. Then passed out on her floor. She woke me up by stepping on me and yelling at me. I was too hungover to argue and just left. I remember me falling asleep, then I woke up at 4 a.m. because I felt somebody laying in my bed. There was this random little cat that literally just entered to a random house giving no shit, Now it is my lovely pet/family member Uwu. In a dorm room, early September. Roommate came home and didn't lock the door. Person who lived in the room the last year came in and climbed into what was now my bed and passed out. I woke up. Hilarity ensued. We became great friends. Was in college, went out too hard on a Thursday night because I had no class the next day. Woke up in my own room to a girl standing there getting dressed. I was dumbfounded. She super casually put on her jacket, said I have to get to class and left before I could even get a word out. I never saw her again. Tried to ask friends who I came home with, everyone said I just disappeared. Her face is burned into my mind and now, 5 years later, I have no clue what happened or who I spent the night with. Was a female in my mid-20s and fell asleep in a 60-plus man's hotel bed after a night of drinking and restaurant across from said hotel. What could have been a recipe for disaster turned into him saying if I ever had a daughter I hope she'd be just like you. I called you a cab and here's your wallet. Be safe now. I was at a bar in Wilmington and I got crazy drunk. I was hanging out with some college kids because my buddy I was there with got laid so I was on my own and bored. We did a ghost tour, saw some sights, and of course a few bar crawls. I woke up in my bed in my hotel room with my buddy's one-nighter. Apparently she had showered and crashed into the bed after they were done and hadn't bothered to move. We woke up spooning naked. Took me a good hour of panic the next morning before I realized that I had not in fact partaken in the leftover gravy stirring. I once rescued an injured bat and brought it to my room. Went to sleep and found a guy passed out on the floor and the bat was nowhere to be found. Weird shit. Honestly it was terrible. I went to bed one night with my fiancée whom I loved, but the next morning that woman was a stranger. She was cold, distant. Admitted to me that morning she cheated the week before. I was crushed. I didn't say a word, just walked out the door. I woke up in bed with a woman with the funkiest tattoos imaginable. No clue on how I got there at all. Still inside her. No idea how we managed to get there. Disturbing. She had no car and mine was still at the bar. Awkward conversation and parting of the ways. Her husband was due back from a trip in a few hours. No more Long Island iced teas for me. https://www.foodnetwork.com/recipes/Long Island iced tea recipe 1956332. Hostel in the Philippines. Woke up to some drunk man bun dude squeezing into my bed with me. Mine was the one next to the door, so I figured he just stumbled in. I politely tried to tell him it's not his bed, but he refused to move so I violently kicked him off. It was hot as shit, so I already had trouble falling asleep earlier and this just pissed me off. Great trip though. Slept with a dude in college and didn't realize he had a girlfriend. She was calling in the morning and he turned over to me saying, "Babe, why are you calling me?" The most shame walk ensued. They're still together lol. When I had my son, I couldn't sleep. I told my doctor I hadn't slept a full night in 13 months. Most nights I was getting only an hour or two and I couldn't sleep during the day. I tried to nap, but I'd just stare at the ceiling. My doctor prescribed me Ambien. The first night I took it and went to bed. Sometime during the night, my husband brought the baby into our bed. I woke up to find a baby covered in rainbows and tiny little gnomes. Me, honey, wake up. There's a baby in our bed. Husband, I know. You're going to wake him up. Me, do his parents know he's here? Husband, his dad does. Go to sleep. I went to a bar with no shoes on and only my passport/no money. Wound up in Jamaica Plains and had to borrow quarters from the guy I hooked up with so I could take the train home and buy flip-flops. Dated him for a bit after. Another time my roommate's boyfriend's roommate saw me making out with a stranger at a bus stop and could tell I had no clue who that person was and made me come home with him. Very strange and to wake up next to him after being nowhere near their house. Smiley face.